Your support is greatly appreciated. Please engage that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more content. This is Aberration Earth. Our adventure continues. Query: what is the reason for this choice? I assure you there are many other weapons here that can deliver you a higher performance, with much larger burst rates, and with effectively longer ranges. The digital intelligence seemed genuinely perplexed, pausing to provide him with a list of different munitions available to the weapon on the monitor at this end of the table. It's not the rate of fire or speed we need, Ventrulis remarked as he looked over the itinerary, checking the 5 boreholes positioned along the smooth arcing outer side of the crescent. Explain, RX-414 asked. Its blinking light seemed insistent on an answer. He had touched on something of interest to the disembodied entity. Thanks to my friend, the captain of the Urchin Gull, I learned when we were fighting the Blanched. They can't defend themselves against gunfire when it's at point-blank range. It's the same reason we can fight them with handheld weapons. The velocity is what triggers their defenses. The slower and closer to them you get, the less protection they have. It's why the dragon can tear through them with his claws, and that weapon of his, while you're left providing aerial support. The spaceman shared the recent experiences he had had. Silent for a few seconds, the machine seemed to be processing what he had said, its light dimming and then brightening when it finally responded. According to your account, the Blanched can be harmed by munitions fire after all, if applied correctly in certain specific situations. Yes, actually it's all thanks to Jenker. We were desperate and he jumped one of them from behind with my pelter, pressing the barrel right up against the creature. He blew its neck wide open, he explained further. That is your sidearm? The digital intelligence inquired. Yes, that's what we call it. But it was lost during the battle. That villain, Tarmor, the one leading the Blanched, he pulled it apart with whatever that power was that he has now. He turned it into dust, Merrick answered, unnerved by the recollection. The Knights were terrifying enough. Ather Tarmor had become something else entirely. He reeked of a putrid force that seemed to ooze from the very pores of his armor. That handsome face of his was like a devil's mask, made to mock the world, to let all know that evil came to them in the guise of what they considered truly beautiful, poisoning even the very subjective nature of that concept. To their fiendish advantage, no doubt. This changes things. I must inform Hexabulus immediately. For hundreds of years, we have failed to register this aspect of their abilities. You and this Jenker, you have done us a great service, RX-414 announced. You didn't know? Ventrulis remarked, somewhat surprised to hear this from one of the two entities who seemed to be able to make short work of those vile beings they called the Blanched. Investigation of that type was not necessary. There has been a long-standing treaty with the Weeping Worm, preventing the expansion of the Blanched from their land. The machine explained in brief. There was? What happened that ended it? The spaceman wondered, but thought he knew the answer now, even as he asked the question. Your arrival and our subsequent breach of the Accord, that is what ended it, the disembodied consciousness told him. It did? Why did you do it? He inquired, curious what it had meant about an accord, and why they would break it. To save you. On the beach when you were trying to escape them, we intervened, but we lost track of you after that, RX-414 stated. It was a stroke of luck that we got away. I thought that may have been you. We went for a deep swim. When we came back up, you weren't there, so I wasn't sure. I thought you were trying to kill me. But I suppose I owe you my thanks now, the spaceman remarked, thinking it through. You are welcome. But it's Hexabulus who deserves the gratitude. The decision was ultimately his, the digital intelligence confessed, suddenly painting that creature in a new light. That admission left him stumped. The dragon was the last one he'd expect to take such action. He was forced to revise his opinion of the beast, who perhaps was not such a monster after all. The machine's consciousness seemed to leave him for a time then. Even though the drone remained in his company, it was silent and unresponsive, likely due to the mind of RX-414 being preoccupied with another discussion unfolding at the moment elsewhere within the huge stone that was the home of these titans. The Zaxfoyan whistled softly to himself as he went through the racks and shelves of available weapons, picking out a stubby pistol with a barrel shaped like an open shark's mouth, complete with serrated teeth. He dropped it beside the shooting cubbies, adding it to a pile he had been collecting to test on the firing range. He tried out the hammerhead before he tested the rest, becoming quite pleased with the devastating results it could deliver. The fat spherical slugs he loaded into it came packed with different explosive yields that could immolate, shred, and blow his targets to pieces. The drone reactivated and flew over to him. Coming to a stop behind him, it hovered there, waiting patiently as he carried on trying out the various weapons he had selected. Once he was satisfied with the arms he'd chosen, a carrier tram arrived silently in front of the entrance, moving quietly along the magnetically powered tracks, into which he loaded all of his ordnances, following the machine's ongoing directions. It shot away once he was done, bringing not just what he had selected, but a stockpile of other munitions, including large piles of missiles, some of which were of such a strange design he nearly didn't recognize what they were at first. Some being like discs, others cubical, and even a triangular thing that was partially transparent. Escorted back to the large cavern by the small drone, he returned to find that the dragon had come down from his ledge and was leaning against a big rock, which he used to place a massive book upon, one large enough for him to write or read from, and by the looks of it, it had seen frequent use. Grumbling to himself, the beast sat with his back legs folded up under him, and his forward legs, or arms, crossed in front. His eyes remained closed as he puffed on his half-finished cigar, surrounding his head in a haze of thick smoke. Velocity and proximity. Curious. What other surprises do you have for us, worm? Hexabulus was muttering pensively, tapping an oversized writing quill with one hand against his chin. Letting out a long breath and a prolonged sigh, he continued speaking without opening his lids. I can smell you, human. You carry an odor like a sterilized steel laboratory, mixed with the sweat and other unappealing scents that men produce. Though I'll admit, yours are more subdued. They're still there. I find it repugnant and yet also instructively delicious, if that makes sense. Is it true you crossed between the stars to come here? It's true. Grace must have told you. I come from a planet called Leopold 7, in the Leopold system. It's nearly 100 light years away. We are explorers come to reestablish relations with Earth, as our ancestors were colonists who originally came from this world thousands of years ago, Merrick replied, approaching cautiously, but with less fear now than what he had felt before. Opening his eyes, the giant red dragon stared down at him discerningly, as he remarked with a growl, She wisely did tell us. That Fey girl you want to save. I wouldn't have believed her had she not told the truth, and were it not for certain other events that have happened. The massive machine that he had first been introduced to as RX-414 still remained silent. It had stepped back and had several larger flying drones buzzing around it, performing some general maintenance on it if Ventrulus was to venture a guess. His escort had sped away after they had arrived back here, leaving him alone with the crimson-scaled monster, whom he now faced by himself. And despite knowing that the beast's intentions towards him were not as perilous as he had originally believed. It was still an incredibly intimidating situation. Hexabulus bore a hole through his soul with the gaze he had leveled upon him. The spaceman thought that not even when he and Jenker had been fighting for their lives against the Blanched, who definitely made his skin crawl with the unnatural evil they seemed to exude, had he felt something quite like this. Master Hexabulus, why do you look at me like that? Have I offended you in some way? I don't understand. Your gaze says you're interested in something else that is beyond just making a meal out of me, I'd wager. Or you would have done that already. Am I wrong? The Zaxvoyan suddenly stated, deciding honest and direct communication with the creature was his best approach now. Even with the potential danger that could result as a consequence, he needed to be sure the fire-breathing reptile was on his side, at least if he was going to have any hope of saving his only other friend on this strange and dangerous world. Curling his lip at one corner, the crimson-scaled monster bit down on his cigar hard, causing it to fall from his mouth as it was severed between those teeth and leaving one unlit stub lodged there, awkwardly hanging from the gum line it had become stuck in. Flicking it free with his long tongue, the fearsome Drake chewed on the loose cigar butt now rolling around in his mouth. Then, with a snarl, he swallowed it in a single gulp that was punctuated by a puff of smoke shooting out from his nostrils. The huge head of the red dragon came swinging down on its long neck, bringing itself to eye level with the human who had just dared to speak to it so bluntly. Its thin lips trembled threateningly as it let out a low growl. How observant of you, human. Very well, I'll answer you, but let me ask you a question of my own first. Why are you in my visions? What have you to do with saving the world? The red dragon stormed, his hot breath washing across his body as the creature demanded an answer from him. Disconcerted by what he had just heard, Merrick stumbled for the words by which he could reply. For what does one say when a beast believed to be solely the invention of fiction claims that you plague its dreams? I don't know. What visions? I'm not even sure if what you're saying makes sense. What is it? What do you see? The Blanched is an affliction that creeps across all lands. Like a pestilence, they spread from the shimmering city, bringing and sharing misery wherever they reach. In their folly, they awaken the spirits of the 12 temples, the foundries of our Genesis, threatening all life in the process. We are left standing on the precipice. Then, from far across the heavens comes hope, a light that takes the shape of a cosmic wanderer, a child of Earth returned. He is the key to stopping the Weeper, and in so doing, saving the world. And his face is your face. That is what I dream of. Now, what do you make of that? Hexabulus barked, challenging him to respond, punctuating the moment by pointing one of the long-clawed digits on his right front limb in his direction, towards the center of his chest. What do I make of that? I have crossed the universe to get here. My journey is one that began further than 100 light years away. Ventrulus cautiously started. To come to a planet that's so different from the one we expected to find, populated by things that we only believed existed in works of fiction and fantasy, and to find out that it is the place we were in search of all along. That is an experience itself I can barely describe. Now a monster that terrorized me and chased me for days on end is telling me it has seen me in a vision, and somehow I'm supposed to be, what, the savior of the planet? If it wasn't for the microchip in my head, I'd think I had gone insane. But I know I haven't. And I wish I could say I had. So, that's what I make of your claim. Now, are you going to help me save Grace or not? Kill me or lend me your aid. We don't have all damn day. The dragon did the last thing he expected after that. Instead of murdering him right there, he rose up and threw his head back towards the unmoving machine, to whom he remarked with a chortle, "Ha! You were right, RX. He has a spine. I haven't smelled a drop of urine come from him yet." As expected, you should know better than to doubt my assessment. The digital intelligence responded, its voice booming out from the giant robot frame once again. With that, the winged beast launched himself up to his perch overhead, banging around loudly as he threw stuff about seemingly haphazardly, gathering some things together out of sight. The giant machine began to move again, and the drones, having finished their work, zipped away, disappearing from the cave. Stepping towards the tram that carried the cargo from the armory, RX-414 reconfigured the shape of his form, going from a two-legged biped to an aerial vehicle with a wide storage hold, which their supplies were loaded into. "As you said, human," the fire-breathing reptile stated as he flapped down from above to rejoin them. "We don't have all damn day. Come, hop on. We need to save the Fae girl, Grace." "Yeah? All right, thank you," the spaceman replied gratefully, his mood brightening with the invitation. For all the intimidation and fear the monster naturally created, flying through the clouds in the open air on its back, that had been an exhilarating experience he did not mind repeating. Grabbing the hammerhead from the carts, he slung it onto his back, then walked around to pull himself up onto the dragon by grabbing hold of his spines. With a look of tolerant irritation, the red dragon flapped his wings and went airborne, while the machine followed closely behind. They headed through the winding tunnels and eventually back outside. They set out from the stone in the sky, the floating fortress of Borag Nord, soaring through the clouds, heading due southwest, towards the Blanchlands and the Shimmering City, and to the unknown destiny that awaited them there. There ends our chapter. Until next time, thanks for listening. Please engage the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content.